You will marry him, Celeste. This discussion is over. Thaddeus Hawthorne's voice cut through the morning air like a blade, his weathered hands gripping the mahogany desk until his knuckles turned white. The study door had been closed for 20 minutes, but Celeste could still hear her stepmother Isadora's satisfied laughter echoing from the hallway. Father, you can't be serious. I don't even know this man. Celeste stood frozen near the window, her cotton dress suddenly feeling like a straitjacket. Adrian Ravencroft? The name means nothing to me. It should mean everything to you now. Thaddeus turned away, unable to meet her eyes. The arrangements have been made. The wedding is in 6 weeks. 6 weeks. The words came out as a whisper. Why are you doing this to me? Because I have no choice. His voice cracked slightly. There are debts, Celeste. Old debts that must be paid, and this is the only way. The library had always been Celeste's sanctuary, but today even the familiar scent of old books couldn't calm her racing heart. She'd fled there after the confrontation with her father, needing space to process the impossible situation he'd thrust upon her. 22 years of carefully planned dreams had just been shattered in a single conversation. The heavy oak door creaked open, and she tensed, expecting Isadora's triumphant face. Instead, a tall stranger stepped inside, his dark hair slightly disheveled from the Tennessee wind. His eyes were an unusual shade of green, almost emerald, and they locked onto hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. I'm looking for Miss Hawthorne, he said, his voice carrying a slight New York accent. I believe we have an appointment. I'm Celeste Hawthorne. She straightened her shoulders, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. And you must be Adrian Ravencroft. I am. He closed the door behind him, the sound echoing through the quiet space. Though I suspect neither of us wanted this meeting. His directness caught her off guard. She'd expected polite pleasantries, perhaps some attempt at charm. Instead, he stood there studying her with the same wariness she felt toward him. You're right about that, she said. I assume you're here because of some business arrangement with my father. Business arrangement. He repeated the word slowly, as if tasting something bitter. Is that what they told you? They told me I'm to marry you in 6 weeks. Beyond that, I know nothing. She moved away from the window, putting the reading table between them. I don't know why you agreed to this, Mr. Ravencroft, but I want you to understand that I'm not some prize to be won. Good, because I'm not looking for a prize. He walked closer, and she noticed the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw clenched slightly. I'm here because I have to be, just like you. What do you mean? Your father didn't tell you about the debt, did he? Adrian's laugh held no humor. 70 years ago, your great-grandfather borrowed money from mine. A lot of money. The terms were unusual. What kind of terms? The kind that bind families together whether they want to be bound or not. He stopped at the edge of the table, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes. Your family has been in default for decades. This marriage is the only way to settle the debt. The room seemed to spin around her. That's impossible. My father would have told me. Would he? Or would he let you believe this was just some convenient arrangement? Adrian's voice softened slightly. I've been researching your family for months, Miss Hawthorne. Your father is a good man caught in an impossible situation. My family's lawyers have been circling like vultures, waiting for the final payment. And you? What do you get out of this arrangement? I get to stop being the villain. He ran a hand through his hair, and she noticed how tired he looked. I get to honor an old debt and hopefully find some peace with my family's legacy. Legacy? She couldn't hide her curiosity. The Ravencrofts have a reputation for destroying everything we touch. 3 generations of women have died tragically after marrying into our family. My grandmother, my mother, my sister-in-law. His voice grew cold. Some call it coincidence. Others call it a curse. And you believe in curses? I believe in patterns. I believe in protecting people from my family's poison. He looked directly at her. Which is why I need you to understand something, Miss Hawthorne. This marriage will be a business arrangement, nothing more. I won't pretend to care for you, and I won't expect you to care for me. We'll fulfill our obligations and live separate lives. The words should have been a relief, but instead they stung more than she expected. How romantic. Romance is a luxury neither of us can afford. Adrian stepped back, creating distance between them again. I'll provide for you, protect you, and respect your privacy. In return, you'll bear the Ravencroft name and help me settle this debt once and for all. And if I refuse? Then your father loses everything. The house, the land, his reputation. Your stepmother will make sure of that. His expression darkened. Isadora Hawthorne is not known for her mercy. Celeste's blood ran cold. She'd always known Isadora was calculating, but the way Adrian spoke her name suggested something far more dangerous. You know my stepmother? I know of her. My lawyers have been dealing with her for months, not your father. Adrian's jaw tightened. She's the one who pushed for this marriage arrangement. She's the one who insisted on the 6-week timeline. Why would she do that? I don't know, but I intend to find out. He moved toward the door, then paused. I'll be staying at the Shadowmere estate while the restoration work is completed. If you need anything before the wedding, you can reach me there. Mr. Ravencroft. She called after him, and he turned back. Do you really think this can work? A marriage without love, without trust. Trust is earned, Miss Hawthorne. And love. He hesitated. Love is dangerous for people like us. It makes us vulnerable. It makes us weak. Or it makes us strong. We'll have to agree to disagree on that point. Adrian opened the door. I'll see you at the altar in 6 weeks. As the door closed behind him, Celeste sank into the nearest chair. 6 weeks to prepare for a marriage to a man who believed love was a weakness. 6 weeks to uncover the truth about her family's debt and Isadora's mysterious involvement. 6 weeks to figure out how to survive in a world where everything she believed about her life had just been revealed as a lie. The papers are in the safe, Thaddeus. Sign them. Isadora's voice drifted through the thin walls of the Hawthorne mansion as Celeste pressed her ear against her father's study door. 3 days had passed since her encounter with Adrian Ravencroft, and the house had been filled with hushed conversations and mysterious visitors. I won't do it, Isadora. Not that part. Her father's voice was strained, desperate. The marriage contract is enough. We don't need to involve the other documents. The other documents are exactly why we need this marriage, you fool. Isadora's tone turned venomous. Do you think I've spent 15 years in this backwater town for my health? Do you think I married you for love? Celeste's heart pounded as she realized the conversation was about to reveal something she wasn't supposed to hear. She started to pull away from the door, but Isadora's next words froze her in place. Your precious first wife left quite a legacy, didn't she? All those oil-rich acres in Texas, sitting there waiting for the right heir to claim them. Too bad she never told you about the real will. What real will? Thaddeus's voice cracked. Elena's will left everything to me. Elena's public will, yes. But there was another one, hidden away with a lawyer in Dallas. A will that leaves everything to her daughter, to Celeste. Isadora's laugh was sharp and cold. Imagine my surprise when I finally tracked down that lawyer last month. You're lying. Am I? Then why do you think I've been so eager to arrange this marriage? Why do you think I insisted on the Ravencroft family specifically? Isadora's footsteps moved across the room. Adrian Ravencroft owns restoration companies across the South. He has connections, resources, and most importantly, he has access to legal networks that can make inconvenient documents disappear. Celeste's knees nearly buckled. Her mother had left her an inheritance, oil-rich land in Texas, and Isadora knew about it. You want to steal from my daughter. I want what's rightfully mine. I've given the best years of my life to this family, and I won't be left empty-handed when you die. Isadora's voice grew dangerous. The marriage happens, Thaddeus. Celeste marries Adrian, and during the honeymoon, there will be a tragic accident. Newlyweds are so careless, aren't they? So prone to taking risks. You're talking about murder. I'm talking about justice. And survival. The sound of papers rustling filled the silence. Sign the documents, Thaddeus. Transfer your power of attorney to me. Let me handle the details of Celeste's inheritance after she's gone. You'll never have to know the specifics. Celeste stumbled backward from the door, her mind reeling. Isadora had killed her mother. She was planning to kill her too, and her father was being blackmailed into helping. She ran to her bedroom and locked the door, her hands shaking as she tried to process what she'd heard. The marriage to Adrian wasn't just about settling old debts. It was about positioning her for murder. But did Adrian know? Was he part of Isadora's plan, or was he another victim in her stepmother's deadly game? Meanwhile, at the Shadowmere estate, Adrian stood in the mansion's grand foyer, surrounded by dust-covered furniture and renovation equipment. The house had been in his family for 3 generations, but it had stood empty for the past decade. Now it would serve as his home during the strangest period of his life. Mr. Ravencroft? His assistant, Marcus Webb, approached with a thick folder. "I've finished the research you requested on the Hawthorne family. What did you find? The debt is real, but there's more to it than the lawyers told you." Marcus opened the folder, revealing photographs and documents. The original loan wasn't just about money. Your great-grandfather was investing in oil speculation in Texas. The Hawthornes were his partners, not just his debtors. Adrian frowned. Partners in what? Land acquisition. Thousands of acres in East Texas, purchased under joint ownership. When the oil was discovered, both families should have profited equally. Marcus pointed to a legal document. But there was a falling out. Your great-grandfather claimed full ownership and forced the Hawthornes into debt to buy him out. So the Hawthornes were cheated? It appears so. But here's where it gets interesting. Marcus pulled out another document. Elena Hawthorne, Celeste's mother, inherited those original Texas properties through her family line. She died 15 years ago, supposedly in a car accident. Supposedly, the accident report has inconsistencies. No skid marks, no evidence of brake failure, but the car went off a cliff on a clear day. Marcus's expression was grim. And 3 days after the funeral, Thaddeus Hawthorne married Isadora Blackwood, a woman who'd been in town for less than 6 months. Adrian felt a chill run down his spine. You think Isadora killed Elena? I think Isadora is a woman with a past. She's been married 4 times, Mr. Ravencroft. 3 of her previous husbands died in accidents, and she inherited substantial amounts from each of them. And now she's pushing for this marriage between Celeste and me. She's not just pushing for it. She's orchestrating it. The lawyers you've been dealing with? They're on her payroll, not your family's. She's been manipulating this entire situation from the beginning. Adrian walked to the window, staring out at the Tennessee countryside. The pieces were falling into place, but the picture they created was terrifying. She wants Celeste dead. She wants Celeste's inheritance. And if you marry her, you'll be in a position to help Isadora claim it after a convenient tragedy. Like hell I will. Adrian turned back to Marcus. What do we know about this inheritance? According to the records I found, it's substantial. 30,000 acres of oil-producing land in East Texas, currently generating about $2 million annually in royalties. The land is held in trust, with Elena's daughter as the sole beneficiary. Celeste doesn't know about this, does she? I doubt it. The trust was set up to keep the inheritance secret until she turned 25 or got married, whichever came first. Marcus closed the folder. Isadora has been waiting for the right moment to strike. Adrian felt the familiar weight of his family's curse settling on his shoulders. Every woman who'd ever been close to a Ravencroft had died tragically. His grandmother, his mother, his brother's wife. And now Celeste was being pulled into the same deadly pattern. But this time, he could do something about it. Marcus, I need you to contact that lawyer in Dallas immediately. We need to secure Elena's real will before Isadora can destroy it. Adrian moved toward the door. And I need to warn Celeste. If she's going to survive this, she needs to know what she's really up against. And the marriage? The marriage is still happening, but not for the reasons Isadora thinks. Adrian's jaw tightened. She wants to use me to get to Celeste's inheritance. Instead, I'm going to use this marriage to protect Celeste from her. That's a dangerous game, Mr. Ravencroft. The Ravencroft family has been playing dangerous games for generations. It's time we started winning one. As Adrian left the mansion, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into a trap that had been set long before he'd ever heard of Celeste Hawthorne. But for the first time in his life, he had something worth fighting for. He just hoped he could keep her alive long enough to win. The knock on Celeste's bedroom window came at midnight, soft but insistent. She'd been staring at the ceiling for hours, replaying the conversation she'd overheard between her father and Isadora. When she saw Adrian's face pressed against the glass, her first instinct was to scream. Her second was to let him in. "What are you doing here?" she whispered as he climbed through the window with surprising grace. "If Isadora finds you." "She won't. I made sure she left the house first." Adrian's voice was low, urgent. "We need to talk, and it can't wait until morning." "About what?" "About the fact that your stepmother is planning to kill you." The words hit her like a physical blow, even though she'd been expecting them. Hearing someone else say it made it real in a way that terrified her. "You know about that?" "You know too?" Adrian's eyes widened. "How?" "I overheard her talking to my father. She killed my mother, didn't she? For some inheritance I didn't even know existed." Oil land in Texas. About $2 million a year in royalties. Adrian moved closer, and she could see the tension in his shoulders. She's been planning this for months, maybe years. The marriage, the timing, everything. And you? Are you part of her plan? The question came out harder than she'd intended, but she had to know. I was supposed to be. She hired the lawyers who approached me about the family debt. She's been manipulating both of us from the beginning. Adrian ran a hand through his hair. But I'm not playing her game anymore. What do you mean? I mean we're going to beat her at it. He pulled a chair close to her bed and sat down. The marriage is still happening, but not for the reasons she thinks. We're going to use it to protect you and expose her. How? By making her think her plan is working while we gather evidence against her. Adrian leaned forward. My assistant found proof that she's done this before. 3 previous husbands, all dead in convenient accidents, all leaving her substantial inheritances. Celeste felt sick. She's a serial killer. She's a predator who's been hunting for 15 years. But she made a mistake when she targeted you. She involved my family, and now she has to deal with me. Why should I trust you? The question slipped out before she could stop it. You told me yourself that love is dangerous, that this marriage would be nothing but business. How do I know you're not just protecting your own interests? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. You don't. You have no reason to trust me, and every reason to suspect my motives. But I'm asking you to anyway. That's not much of an answer. It's the only honest one I can give you. He looked directly at her. I've spent my entire life believing that everyone I care about ends up dead. My grandmother, my mother, my sister-in-law. All of them died because they were connected to the Ravencroft family. And now you're asking me to connect myself to your family. I'm asking you to let me protect you from something worse than a family curse. His voice dropped. I'm asking you to trust that maybe, just maybe, I can break the pattern this time. Something in his tone made her chest tighten. There was pain there, old and deep, and a desperate hope that he was trying to hide. What exactly are you proposing? We go through with the marriage. We make Isadora think everything is proceeding according to her plan. Meanwhile, we gather evidence against her and find a way to secure your inheritance legally. Adrian stood up and began pacing. During the honeymoon, when she's expecting you to have your accident, we'll be ready for her. That sounds incredibly dangerous. It is, but it's better than the alternative. He stopped pacing and looked at her. She's going to kill you, Celeste. If not during the honeymoon, then some other time. She's waited 15 years for this inheritance. She's not going to give up now. And you're willing to risk your life for someone you barely know? I'm willing to risk my life for someone who doesn't deserve to die for other people's greed. He sat back down. Besides, I know more about you than you think. What do you mean? I've been researching your family for months. I know you volunteer at the Children's Hospital every Tuesday. I know you read 3 books a week and that you've been writing letters to soldiers overseas since you were 16. I know you turned down a scholarship to Vanderbilt because you didn't want to leave your father alone with Isadora. Celeste felt heat rise in her cheeks. You've been spying on me. I've been trying to understand who I was being forced to marry. What I found was someone who deserves better than being a pawn in someone else's game. And what makes you think you're better than being a pawn yourself? Because I'm choosing to fight back. Adrian leaned forward again. I'm choosing to trust someone for the first time in my life. I'm choosing to believe that maybe the Ravencroft curse isn't fate. It's just a series of bad choices made by the men in my family. What if you're wrong? Then at least I'll go down fighting instead of running away. He reached out and touched her hand, and she felt a jolt of electricity run up her arm. What do you say, Celeste? Will you fight with me? She looked down at their joined hands, surprised by how right it felt. 3 days ago, this man had been a stranger. Now he was asking her to trust him with her life. The smart thing would be to say no, to find another way, to run. But there was something about Adrian Ravencroft that made her want to be brave. What happens after? She asked. If we survive this, if we expose Isadora, what happens to us? I don't know. His honesty was both refreshing and terrifying. I've never planned that far ahead before. Because you've never expected to survive? Because I've never had anything worth surviving for. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Celeste felt her heart racing, not from fear this time, but from something else entirely. Something that felt dangerously close to hope. This is crazy, she whispered. Completely insane, he agreed. We barely know each other. We have 5 weeks to fix that. 5 weeks to plan a strategy that could get us both killed. 5 weeks to save your life and maybe find something worth living for. Adrian squeezed her hand gently. I know it's asking a lot, Celeste. I know you have every reason to say no. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw past the careful mask he wore. There was vulnerability there, and fear, and a desperate kind of hope that matched her own. He was asking her to trust him, but he was also trusting her with secrets that could destroy him. Okay, she said finally. Let's do it. You're sure? No, but I'm tired of being afraid, and I'm tired of being manipulated. She stood up, and he rose with her. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. No more lies between us, no more secrets. If we're going to survive, we need to trust each other completely. Agreed. Adrian nodded. Starting now. Starting now. She extended her hand, and he shook it formally. Partners. Partners. He smiled, and for the first time since she'd met him, it reached his eyes. Though I have to warn you, I've never been very good at partnerships. Neither have I. I guess we'll figure it out together. Together, he repeated, and something in the way he said it made her believe that maybe, just maybe, they actually had a chance. The Dallas law office of Hutchinson and Associates sat in a gleaming downtown tower, its marble floors and mahogany walls speaking of old money and older secrets. Marcus Webb adjusted his tie nervously as he waited in the reception area, a briefcase full of forged credentials beside him. Getting access to Elena Hawthorne's sealed documents wouldn't be easy, but Adrian had been very clear about the stakes. Mr. Webb, a silver-haired man in an expensive suit approached. I'm Robert Hutchinson. I understand you're here about the Hawthorne Trust. That's correct. I represent the beneficiary, Celeste Hawthorne. She's recently become engaged and needs to review her mother's final documents. Hutchinson's expression grew guarded. The trust documents were sealed at Mrs. Hawthorne's request. They're not to be opened until specific conditions are met. Marriage being one of those conditions? Among others. Hutchinson studied Marcus carefully. May I see your credentials again? Back in Willowbrook, Celeste sat across from Isadora at the breakfast table, forcing herself to appear calm while her stepmother outlined wedding plans with disturbing enthusiasm. The photographer I've hired is excellent, Isadora said, buttering her toast with deliberate precision. He specializes in documenting important family moments. I want every detail of your wedding preserved. How thoughtful. Celeste kept her voice neutral, though the implication made her skin crawl. Isadora wanted photographic evidence of the marriage for legal purposes, and I've taken the liberty of planning your honeymoon. A charming little cabin in the Smoky Mountains. Very secluded, very romantic. Isadora's smile was sharp, perfect for newlyweds who want privacy. I appreciate you handling the arrangements, but Adrian and I should probably discuss. Nonsense. Men know nothing about romance. Besides, Adrian has already approved everything. He's quite eager to get you alone. The way Isadora said it made Celeste's stomach turn. She was talking about the perfect murder location, and she knew it. Where is father this morning? Celeste asked, changing the subject. Your father had some business in town. Banking matters. Isadora's tone became dismissive. Nothing that concerns you, dear. You should focus on being a good wife. Speaking of which, I should probably spend more time with Adrian before the wedding. Get to know him better. Oh, that won't be necessary. Arranged marriages work best when expectations are kept simple. Isadora stood up, smoothing her skirt. Besides, I've invited him for dinner tonight. You'll have plenty of time to chat then. After Isadora left, Celeste waited 10 minutes before slipping into her father's study. If he was handling banking matters, there might be documents that could help her understand the full scope of Isadora's manipulation. The safe was hidden behind a painting of her mother, and Celeste had watched her father open it countless times over the years. Her hands shook as she turned the familiar combination, but the heavy door swung open smoothly. Inside, she found exactly what she'd feared: transfer documents that would give Isadora power of attorney over all family assets, life insurance policies that had been recently updated, and most damning of all, a copy of what appeared to be Elena Hawthorne's original will. But as Celeste read the document, her blood ran cold. This wasn't her mother's real will at all. It was a forgery, one that left everything to Thaddeus instead of to her. And at the bottom, in Isadora's distinctive handwriting, was a note: original destroyed. Use this version for probate. Her mother's real will had been destroyed. Whatever inheritance Elena had left her was gone, erased by Isadora's careful planning. Finding anything interesting? Celeste spun around to find Isadora standing in the doorway, her expression cold and calculating. I was looking for father's reading glasses, Celeste lied, her heart pounding. In the safe? Isadora stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. How clever of you to know the combination. He told me years ago, in case of emergencies. And this is an emergency? Isadora moved closer, and Celeste could smell her expensive perfume, now associated forever with danger. Or are you simply a curious little girl who doesn't know when to mind her own business? I don't know what you mean. Don't you? Isadora reached around Celeste and pulled the forged will from her hands. This document contains some very interesting information. Would you like me to explain it to you? Celeste remained silent, knowing that anything she said could be used against her. Your mother was a very wealthy woman. Did you know that? Oil money from Texas, passed down through her family for generations. When she died, that money should have come to you. Isadora smiled, but her eyes remained cold. Unfortunately, your mother was also very naive about the people she trusted. What did you do? I did what needed to be done to secure my family's future. Your father was drowning in debt, drinking himself to death over your mother's accident. Someone had to take control. You killed her. I solved a problem. Isadora's voice remained steady, matter of fact. Elena was planning to leave your father. Did you know that? She'd discovered some of his gambling debts and wanted to take you away. She was going to divorce him and claim her inheritance for herself. So you murdered her. I prevented a scandal that would have destroyed this family, and I've spent 15 years cleaning up the mess she left behind. Isadora moved to the window, gazing out at the grounds. Do you know how difficult it is to forge oil company documents? How many lawyers I had to bribe to make Elena's real will disappear? Celeste felt sick. The inheritance is gone. The inheritance is mine. I've earned it through years of sacrifice and careful planning. Your mother's selfish desire to run away with another man doesn't entitle you to millions of dollars you've done nothing to deserve. Another man? Celeste couldn't hide her shock. Oh yes, dear. Your precious mother was having an affair. She was planning to leave your father for some architect from New York, a man named Charles Ravencroft. The room spun around Celeste. Ravencroft, Adrian's father. Didn't you know? This whole situation is deliciously ironic, isn't it? Elena died before she could run away with Charles, and now you're marrying Charles's son. It's almost like fate. You're lying. Am I? Why do you think the debt between our families is so complicated? Why do you think Adrian was so eager to marry you? Isadora turned back to face her. He knows about his father's affair with your mother. He knows about the real inheritance. He's marrying you to get his hands on what he thinks is rightfully his family's money. No. Celeste shook her head. That's not true. Isn't it? Think about it, dear. A wealthy, sophisticated man from New York, agreeing to marry a small-town girl he's never met? What other possible motivation could he have? The seeds of doubt that Isadora planted began to grow in Celeste's mind. Adrian had known so much about her family, had researched them for months. What if his offer to protect her was just another form of manipulation? I can see you're beginning to understand, Isadora said with satisfaction. Adrian Ravencroft is using you, just like his father tried to use your mother. The difference is, I won't let history repeat itself. What do you mean? I mean your tragic honeymoon accident will serve two purposes. It will give me access to what's left of Elena's estate, and it will punish the Ravencroft family for their interference in our lives. Isadora's smile was genuinely warm now, which somehow made it more terrifying. Justice and profit, all in one convenient package. And father? Does he know what you're planning? Your father knows what he needs to know. He signed the documents that matter, and he'll grieve appropriately when the time comes. Men are so much easier to manage when they're consumed by guilt. Celeste realized she was trapped in a nightmare that had been years in the making. Isadora had killed her mother, stolen her inheritance, and was now planning to kill her too. And Adrian, the man she'd begun to trust, might be just another predator in disguise. What happens now? Celeste asked. Now you go upstairs and prepare for dinner. You'll smile and chat with your fiancé, and you'll give no indication that anything is wrong. In 3 weeks, you'll walk down the aisle like a good daughter. And on your honeymoon, you'll finally reunite with your mother. And if I refuse, then your father will have a very unfortunate accident before the wedding, and I'll find another way to claim what's mine. Isadora's mask slipped, revealing the cold killer underneath. Don't test me, Celeste. I've invested too much time in this plan to let a spoiled child ruin it now. As Isadora left the study, Celeste sank into her father's chair, her mind reeling. Everything she thought she knew about her situation had just been turned upside down. Adrien might be her enemy, not her ally. Her mother's inheritance was gone, and she was completely alone in a house with a woman who'd already killed twice and was planning to kill again. But as she sat there in despair, one thought kept nagging at her. If Adrien was working with Isadora, why had Isadora seemed so surprised by Celeste's knowledge of the murder plot? Why hadn't Adrien told her about their midnight conversation? Maybe, just maybe, there was more to Adrien's story than Isadora wanted her to believe. Tonight's dinner would tell her everything she needed to know about whose side her fiancé was really on. The church bells of Willowbrook rang out across the valley as Celeste stood before the altar in her mother's wedding dress, her hands trembling as she held Adrien's. 3 weeks had passed since her confrontation with Isadora, 3 weeks of careful planning and desperate hope that the man beside her was truly her ally and not her executioner. The dinner that had followed Isadora's threats had been a masterpiece of deception on all sides. Adrien had played his part perfectly, discussing honeymoon plans with enthusiasm while his eyes sent Celeste subtle signals that he knew they were being watched. When Isadora had mentioned the cabin in the mountains, he'd agreed with just the right amount of eager anticipation, never letting on that he'd already arranged for backup plans. But even now, as Reverend Matthews spoke the words that would bind them together, Celeste couldn't shake the doubt that Isadora had planted. What if Adrien was simply a better actor than she'd given him credit for? What if this marriage was exactly what Isadora wanted, and Celeste was walking willingly into her own destruction? Do you, Adrien Charles Ravencroft, take Celeste Elena Hawthorne to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. Adrien's voice was steady, but his grip on her hands tightened slightly. Earlier, when they'd had a moment alone, he'd whispered that Marcus had successfully retrieved Elena's real will from the Dallas lawyer. The inheritance was real, and it was substantial. But Isadora had been right about one thing. Charles Ravencroft had been Elena's lover, and the timing of their affair coincided exactly with Elena's death. Do you, Celeste Elena Hawthorne, take Adrien Charles Ravencroft to be your lawfully wedded husband? The question hung in the air as Celeste looked into Adrien's eyes. In them, she saw the same fear and uncertainty that she felt, but also something else. Something that looked dangerously like genuine caring. Whether that was real or calculated, she was about to find out. I do, the Reverend smiled. By the power vested in me by the state of Tennessee, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Adrien's lips met hers in a kiss that was supposed to be ceremonial, but the moment their mouths touched, something electric passed between them. It lasted only seconds, but it was enough to make Celeste's knees weak and her resolve waver. Whatever else Adrien Ravencroft might be, he wasn't indifferent to her. The reception was a blur of congratulations and carefully orchestrated joy. Isadora played the proud stepmother perfectly, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief while making sure the photographer captured every moment. Thaddeus looked haggard and old, but he managed to smile when he walked Celeste down the aisle and gave her away. You look beautiful, sweetheart, he'd whispered in her ear as they'd waited for the music to start. I'm sorry about everything. I hope someday you'll understand. I understand more than you think, Father, she'd replied, and the flash of relief in his eyes had told her everything she needed to know about his level of complicity in Isadora's plans. Now, as she and Adrien made their way to his car amid a shower of rice and well-wishes, Celeste felt the weight of what came next. They were driving to the mountain cabin that Isadora had chosen, the isolated location where her accident was supposed to happen. But they weren't going there to die. They were going there to set a trap. Ready? Adrien asked as he helped her into the passenger seat, his hand lingering on hers for just a moment longer than necessary. As ready as I'll ever be, she replied, and she meant it. Whatever happened in the next few days, at least she wouldn't be facing it alone. The drive to the cabin took 3 hours through winding mountain roads that grew more isolated with each mile. Adrien had insisted on driving, claiming he wanted to give her time to rest before their honeymoon, but Celeste suspected he was actually scouting for potential ambush locations. He'd been quiet for most of the trip, his jaw tight with concentration. Penny for your thoughts. she said as they climbed higher into the mountains. Just thinking about my father, Adrian replied. About the choices he made and the consequences they had for everyone around him. Isadora told me about the affair. I figured she would. It's the perfect way to make you doubt my motives. Adrian glanced at her. Do you? Doubt them, I mean. I'm trying not to. Celeste turned in her seat to face him. But I need to know the truth, Adrian. All of it. If we're going to trust each other with our lives, there can't be any more secrets between us. You're right. Adrian pulled the car over at a scenic overlook and turned off the engine. My father was having an affair with your mother. It started when he came to Willowbrook to assess some property for a client. Elena was unhappy in her marriage, and my father was recently widowed. They fell in love. And Elena was planning to leave your father and move to New York with me and my father. She'd already consulted with a lawyer about divorce proceedings. Adrian's voice grew heavy. The night she died, she was supposed to meet my father at a hotel outside of town. She never showed up. Because Isadora killed her. Because Isadora couldn't let her leave with the inheritance. Elena's death wasn't just about money, Celeste. It was about control. Isadora couldn't risk Elena taking you away from Willowbrook, because then she'd lose access to both you and the inheritance. So she killed her and married my father. She killed her and positioned herself as the grieving widow's replacement. The perfect consolation prize for a man destroyed by guilt. Adrian reached over and took her hand. My father blamed himself for Elena's death. He believed that if he hadn't encouraged her to leave, she'd still be alive. He died 3 years later, and I've always suspected it wasn't entirely natural causes. You think Isadora killed him too? I think Isadora has been planning this for a very long time. The marriage between us isn't just about your inheritance. It's about revenge against the Ravencroft family for interfering with her original plans. Celeste squeezed his hand. And you? What do you want out of this marriage? I want to stop running from my family's mistakes. I want to protect you. And I want to find out if it's possible for a Ravencroft to love someone without destroying them. The word love hung between them like a challenge. It was too soon, too complicated, too dangerous. But sitting there in the growing darkness, with the weight of their shared deception pressing down on them, Celeste felt something shifting inside her chest. We should go, she said quietly. It'll be dark soon, and we need to be settled in the cabin before Isadora's people arrive. About that, Adrian said as he started the car again. Marcus has been tracking the cabin for the past week. There are motion sensors around the property, and at least 2 men have been spotted in the woods nearby. Whatever Isadora has planned, it's going to happen tonight. Tonight? But we just got married. Wouldn't it be suspicious if something happened so quickly? Not if it looks like a crime of passion. A jealous husband who discovered his new wife's infidelity on their wedding night. Adrian's voice was bitter. Isadora has thought of everything. They drove the rest of the way in silence, both lost in their own thoughts about what the night might bring. The cabin was exactly as Isadora had described it. Charming, secluded, and perfect for murder. Adrian carried their bags inside, while Celeste stood on the porch, listening to the sounds of the forest around them. It's beautiful, she said when he joined her outside. It's a trap, he replied. But it's our trap now. Inside, the cabin was decorated for romance. Candles, wine, rose petals scattered across the bed. Isadora had spared no expense in creating the perfect scene for newlyweds. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. I'll take the couch, Adrian said, setting down their bags. No. Celeste surprised herself with the firmness in her voice. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. We're supposed to be newlyweds. If anyone is watching, they need to believe we're really married. Celeste, you don't have to. Yes, I do. She turned to face him, her heart pounding. I've been thinking about what you said, about trust, and about taking chances. If I'm going to die tonight, I don't want to die as a victim. I want to die as a woman who chose her own fate. Adrian moved closer, his eyes searching her face. What are you saying? I'm saying that maybe the Ravencroft curse isn't about destroying the women you love. Maybe it's about not loving them enough to fight for them. She reached up and touched his face. I'm saying that I'm tired of being afraid, and I'm tired of pretending that I don't feel something for you. Celeste. His voice was hoarse with emotion. I know it's crazy. I know we barely know each other. But I'd rather have one night of something real than a lifetime of something safe. Adrian's control finally snapped. He pulled her into his arms, and this time when their lips met, there was nothing ceremonial about it. The kiss was desperate, hungry, full of all the fear and desire they'd been holding back. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "Are you sure?" he whispered against her forehead. "I'm sure," she replied, and for the first time in weeks, she meant it completely. What followed was a night of passion that neither of them had expected. Adrian was gentle but intense, worshipping her body with a reverence that made her feel precious and desired. Celeste gave herself to him completely, holding nothing back, letting him see all of her vulnerability and strength. They made love with the desperate intensity of people who knew they might not survive the night, but also with the tenderness of two souls who had found each other against impossible odds. When they finally lay exhausted in each other's arms, watching the candles flicker in the darkness, Celeste knew that whatever happened next, this night had changed everything. "I love you," Adrian whispered into her hair. "I love you too," she replied, and the words felt like a promise and a prayer and a declaration of war all at once. Outside, the forest was silent except for the sound of footsteps moving through the underbrush, getting closer to the cabin with each passing moment. The sound of breaking glass shattered the pre-dawn silence, jerking Celeste awake from the deepest sleep she'd experienced in weeks. Adrian was already moving, rolling off the bed and reaching for the gun he'd hidden beneath the nightstand. "Stay down," he whispered, but it was too late. The cabin door burst open, and 3 men in dark clothing rushed inside. "Good morning, newlyweds," said a familiar voice from the doorway. Isadora stepped into the cabin, elegant even in the dim light, a small pistol held casually in her manicured hand. "I hope you enjoyed your wedding night. It will be your last." Celeste clutched the sheet to her chest, her mind racing. This wasn't how they'd planned it. Adrian was supposed to have backup, hidden cameras, some way to turn the tables on Isadora. Instead, they were naked and vulnerable, trapped in a cabin with a woman who'd already killed at least twice. "Let her go, Isadora," Adrian said, his own weapon trained on the intruders. "Your fight is with me, not with her." "Oh, but that's where you're wrong," Isadora replied with a smile. "My fight has always been with her. You're just a convenient means to an end." "The inheritance," Celeste said, pieces clicking into place in her mind. "You're not just after my mother's oil money. There's something else, isn't there?" "Very good, dear. I always knew you were smarter than your father gave you credit for." Isadora moved closer, her men flanking her. "Tell me, have you ever wondered why your mother really left you that land in Texas?" "Because it was her family's property. Because it sits on top of the largest untapped oil reserve in North America. A reserve that several major companies are willing to pay billions for." Isadora's eyes gleamed with greed. "Your mother's little inheritance isn't worth $2 million a year, Celeste. It's worth $200 million minimum." Adrian's grip tightened on his gun. "That's impossible. The geological surveys were falsified, thanks to some very expensive bribes and some very creative accounting. Elena figured it out about a week before she died. She was planning to take the information to the authorities." "So you killed her to keep the secret," Celeste said. "I killed her to secure our family's future. $200 million, Celeste. Enough to buy anything, anyone, any future we could possibly want." Isadora's voice took on an almost religious fervor. Elena was going to give it all away to environmental groups and charity organizations. She was going to waste a fortune on saving trees and feeding the poor. "You're insane. I'm practical, and I'm tired of waiting." Isadora nodded to her men. "Take them outside. Make it look like a robbery gone wrong." Newlyweds surprised by burglars, both shot while trying to escape. As the men moved forward, Adrian made his move. He dove behind the dresser, firing as he went. One of the intruders went down immediately, but the other 2 returned fire, splintering wood and shattered glass across the room. "Run!" Adrian shouted to Celeste, but before she could move, strong hands grabbed her, hauling her off the bed and toward the door. "Let her go." Adrian's voice was raw with desperation as he watched his wife being dragged away. "Come quietly, Mr. Ravencroft, and I'll make her death quick," Isadora called back. "Resist, and I'll let my men have some fun with her first." Adrian emerged from behind the dresser, his hands raised in surrender. The sight of him giving up for her sake made Celeste's heart break and soar at the same time. Whatever else happened, she knew now that his love was real. They were forced outside into the cold mountain air, Celeste still wrapped only in the bedsheet. The forest around them was silent except for the sound of their breathing and the crunch of leaves underfoot. "You know," Isadora said conversationally as they walked toward a clearing, "I really did try to make this easy for everyone. A simple marriage, a quick accident, a tragic but believable story for the newspapers. But you just couldn't leave well enough alone, could you?" "We know about your other husbands," Adrian said. "The police in 3 states are already investigating those convenient accidents." "Are they?" Isadora seemed genuinely amused. "And what evidence do they have?" "Accidents happen, Mr. Ravencroft. People die in car crashes, fall down stairs, drown in bathtubs. Life is tragically unpredictable." "Not this time," Celeste said, surprising everyone including herself with the strength in her voice. "This time, people know where we are. This time, there are witnesses." "What witnesses?" Isadora laughed. "We're in the middle of nowhere, dear. The nearest neighbor is 20 miles away." "The witnesses you don't know about," Celeste said, praying that Adrian's backup plan was real and not just wishful thinking. "The ones who've been watching you for weeks." Isadora's smile faltered slightly. "You're bluffing." "Am I? Then why don't you check your phone? See if you can get a signal up here. See if your escape route is still clear." For the first time, doubt crept into Isadora's expression. She pulled out her phone, and her face went white when she saw the screen. "No signal," she whispered. "That's because the entire area has been jammed," Adrian said, his confidence returning. "Did you really think I'd come up here without backup? Did you really think I'd risk Celeste's life on nothing but hope?" "You're lying." But Isadora's voice lacked conviction now. "The FBI has been tracking you for months, Isadora. Ever since Marcus found the connection between your previous husbands and their mysterious deaths. They've been waiting for you to make your move." As if summoned by his words, the sound of helicopters suddenly filled the air. Searchlights swept through the trees, and amplified voices called out commands to drop weapons and surrender. "No." Isadora raised her gun toward Celeste. "If I can't have the money, no one can." The shot that rang out didn't come from Isadora's gun. It came from the forest, from a sniper who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. Isadora crumpled to the ground, her weapon falling harmlessly into the leaves. Federal agents swarmed the clearing, securing the scene and taking the surviving men into custody. Adrian rushed to Celeste, wrapping her in his arms and his jacket, both of them shaking with relief and residual terror. "It's over," he whispered into her hair. "It's finally over." "How?" she asked. "How did you arrange all this?" "Marcus has been working with the FBI for weeks. The dinner at your house, the wedding, even this cabin. Everything was monitored, recorded, documented. We needed Isadora to confess, and we needed her to make her move. It was the only way to stop her permanently. And if something had gone wrong, if your backup hadn't arrived in time?" Adrian pulled back to look at her, his eyes serious. "Then I would have died protecting you, and I would have considered it a life well spent." The words hit her like a physical blow, not because they were dramatic or romantic, but because she could see in his eyes that he meant them absolutely. This man, this complicated, damaged, wonderful man, loved her enough to die for her. "I love you too," she said, and kissed him there in the clearing surrounded by federal agents and the remains of Isadora's deadly ambition. Later, as they gave their statements and watched the crime scene being processed, Agent Sarah Collins filled them in on the full scope of the investigation. Isadora Blackwood wasn't even her real name, Collins explained. She was born Martha Phillips in Detroit. She's been running marriage scams for over 20 years, always targeting widowed men with substantial assets. Your case was just the biggest payday she'd ever attempted. "What about my father?" Celeste asked. "How much did he know?" "From what we can determine, very little. She manipulated him through guilt and fear, but he never knew about the murders. He'll need therapy, but he's not facing any criminal charges. And the inheritance is entirely legitimate and entirely yours. $230 million, to be exact, once the oil extraction contracts are finalized." Collins smiled. "Congratulations, Mrs. Ravencroft. You're now one of the wealthiest women in Tennessee." As they drove back down the mountain toward their new life, Celeste found herself thinking not about the money or the danger they'd just escaped, but about the man beside her. Adrian had risked everything to save her, had loved her when she was penniless, had chosen her over his own safety. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, catching her staring at him. "I'm thinking about how strange life is. Yesterday, I was a small-town girl with nothing but dreams. Today I'm married to a man I love and richer than I ever imagined possible. And tomorrow? Tomorrow we start figuring out what happily ever after actually looks like." She reached over and took his hand. "Think we're up for it?" "With you? I'm up for anything." As they drove toward the sunrise, leaving the nightmare of the past behind them, Celeste knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The Ravencroft curse was broken, not by tragedy, but by love. And that, she thought, was the most powerful magic of all. 6 months after Isadora's death, Celeste stood in the courthouse steps of Willowbrook, watching as the last of the legal proceedings concluded. The woman who had terrorized her family was finally being laid to rest, not in a grave, but in a mountain of court documents and criminal evidence that would ensure her victims received justice. "It's finished," Agent Collins said, approaching with a final stack of papers. "Isadora's assets have been seized and distributed among the families of her previous victims. Your testimony was instrumental in closing cases that had been cold for years." Celeste nodded, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders that she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. "What about my father?" "Thaddeus is responding well to therapy. Dr. Martinez says he should be ready to come home within the month." Collins handed her an envelope. "He asked me to give you this." The letter was written in her father's shaky handwriting, and as Celeste read it, tears began to stream down her face. "My dearest Celeste," it began, "I know I can never undo the years of blindness that allowed that woman to manipulate our family. I know I can never take back the pain I caused by forcing you into that marriage. But I want you to know that seeing you with Adrien, seeing the love between you two, has shown me what real marriage should look like. Your mother would be so proud of the woman you've become, and so grateful that you found someone worthy of your heart. Please forgive a foolish old man who loved you the best way he knew how. He's going to be okay," Adrien said, appearing at her side and reading over her shoulder. "We all are." Celeste leaned into her husband's embrace, marveling at how natural it felt after all they'd been through. The marriage that had started as a business arrangement had become something neither of them had expected. A partnership built on trust, respect, and a love that had survived the worst that life could throw at them. "Have you decided what you want to do with the inheritance?" Adrien asked as they walked to the car. "I've been thinking about that." Celeste pulled out a folder she'd been carrying. "I want to establish a foundation. The Elena Hawthorne Foundation for Women's Safety. Shelters, legal aid, counseling services. I want to help other women who are trapped in dangerous situations. Like you were. Like I was. And like my mother was." She looked up at him. "I also want to fund research into domestic violence prevention. If we can identify the warning signs earlier, maybe we can save lives." Adrien stopped walking and turned to face her fully. "You realize that will make you a target for every con artist and fortune hunter in the country. Let them come. I have excellent security now." She smiled and touched his face. "Besides, I've learned to spot the dangerous ones." "Have you now? Dark, brooding men with mysterious pasts and family curses? Dead giveaway." She laughed at his mock-wounded expression. "Good thing I have a weakness for dangerous men. Just one dangerous man, I hope. Just one." She stood on her toes to kiss him. Forever. As they drove home to the Shadowmere estate, which they decided to restore as both their residence and the Foundation's headquarters, Celeste reflected on how much had changed. The house that had once symbolized death and tragedy for Adrien's family was becoming a symbol of hope and new beginnings. They'd found Elena's original diary during the renovation, hidden behind a loose brick in the master bedroom fireplace. In it, she'd written about her love for Charles Ravencroft, her plans to leave Thaddeus, and her growing suspicions about Isadora's true nature. The final entry, dated the day before her death, had been prophetic. "I fear I've waited too long to act. If something happens to me, I pray that someday Celeste will find the happiness I was too cowardly to reach for." "She would have loved you," Celeste had told Adrien after they'd read the diary together. "She would have been happy that our families found a way to heal instead of destroy." Now, as they pulled into the circular drive of their restored home, Celeste saw Marcus waiting on the front steps with what looked like important news. "The oil contracts have been finalized," he announced before they were even out of the car. "The first payment will be deposited next week." Congratulations, you're now worth approximately $400 million. Celeste felt dizzy. The number was so large it didn't seem real. $400 million? The reserves were even larger than the original estimates indicated. You're going to be able to fund your foundation for decades without touching the principal. We're going to be able to fund it, Adrian corrected, taking her hand. We're partners in everything now, remember? She squeezed his fingers, grateful once again for this man who saw her inheritance not as his ticket to wealth, but as their opportunity to make a difference. Partners, she agreed. That evening, as they sat on their restored front porch watching the sunset paint the Tennessee hills gold and crimson, Celeste felt a peace she'd never known before. The foundation papers were spread across the table between them, but for now, they were content to simply be together. Do you ever think about what would have happened if we'd refused the marriage? She asked. Every day, Adrian admitted. And every day, I'm grateful we didn't. Not because of the money, but because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Even with all the danger, all the pain, especially because of it. We've been tested in ways most couples never are, and we came through it stronger. We know we can trust each other with our lives. And our hearts. And our hearts. He lifted their joined hands and kissed her wedding ring. I love you, Celeste Ravencroft. Not because fate forced us together, but because I choose to every single day. I love you too, she replied. And in those simple words was the promise of a lifetime spent choosing each other, building something beautiful from the ashes of the past, and proving that sometimes the most unlikely beginnings can lead to the most extraordinary endings. As the stars came out over Shadowmere, Celeste knew that whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, she would face them with the man she loved by her side. The curse was broken, the past was healed, and their future stretched out before them like an endless road full of possibility. 2 years later, the Elena Hawthorne Foundation had become a beacon of hope across the Southeast. The restored Shadowmere estate now housed administrative offices, counseling centers, and a crisis hotline that had already saved hundreds of lives. But today, as Celeste stood in the garden behind the mansion, her hands resting on her rounded belly, she was thinking about a different kind of new beginning. The judge called, Adrian said, approaching through the rose garden his grandmother had planted decades ago. Isadora's final appeal was denied. Her remaining assets will be transferred to the foundation next month. Good. Celeste turned to face her husband, marveling as she did every day at how much lighter he looked now. The shadows that had haunted his eyes were gone, replaced by a contentment that made him seem years younger. Justice for her victims, and more resources for ours. Speaking of resources, Dr. Williams called with the test results. Adrian's smile grew wider. Everything looks perfect. The baby is healthy, growing right on schedule. And Celeste raised an eyebrow, knowing there was more. And we're having a daughter. Adrian's voice broke slightly as he said it. A little girl who's going to grow up knowing she's loved and protected and free to become whatever she dreams of being. Celeste wiped away the tears that had started flowing the moment he'd said daughter. After everything they'd been through, after all the pain and loss their families had experienced, they were being blessed with new life. What should we name her? I was thinking Elena, Adrian said softly. After your mother. The woman who started all of this by being brave enough to love. Elena Ravencroft. Celeste tested the name, liking how it sounded. Strong, beautiful, full of possibility. She would have loved that. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the mountains that had once seemed so threatening and now felt like protective guardians around their home. The Foundation's latest success story had been featured in the newspaper that morning. A young woman named Sarah who'd escaped an abusive marriage with their help and was now completing law school, determined to help other women find their freedom. Mrs. Ravencroft? Marcus appeared at the garden gate, looking somewhat embarrassed to interrupt their private moment. I'm sorry to bother you, but there's someone here to see you. She says it's urgent. The woman waiting in the Foundation's reception area was young, perhaps 25, with haunted eyes that Celeste recognized immediately. She'd seen that same look in her own mirror not so long ago. My name is Jessica Monroe, the woman said, her voice barely above a whisper. I saw the article about your foundation in the Dallas paper. I need help, of course. Celeste guided her to a comfortable chair while Adrian quietly signaled for one of their counselors to join them. You're safe here. Tell us what's happening. The story that emerged was heartbreakingly familiar. An older husband with connections and money, a young wife isolated from family and friends, escalating abuse disguised as love. But there were differences too, details that made Celeste's blood run cold. He's been married before, Jessica said. 3 times. His other wives all died in accidents. Car crashes, falls, a drowning. But I found insurance papers hidden in his office. He's been collecting on their life insurance policies for years. Adrian and Celeste exchanged glances. Another predator, another woman in danger, another chance to prevent a tragedy before it happened. We're going to help you, Celeste said firmly. But I need you to understand that this won't be easy. Men like your husband don't give up easily. I know, but I can't stay. Last week he showed me a new life insurance policy he'd taken out on me. $2 million. Jessica's voice broke. He said it was to protect our future together. But the way he looked at me when he said it. You don't have to explain, Adrian said gently. We understand exactly what you're facing, and we're going to make sure you survive it. The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Phone calls to lawyers, arrangements for safe houses, coordination with law enforcement. It was the kind of work the foundation did regularly now, but this case felt especially significant. Another woman getting the chance that Elena Hawthorne never had. As they worked late into the evening, Celeste felt the baby kick strongly, as if she too understood the importance of what they were doing. She's going to grow up in a different world, Adrian said, noticing Celeste's hand on her belly. A world where women like Jessica have somewhere to turn, where predators like Isadora don't get away with their crimes for decades. A world where love wins, Celeste agreed, where families like ours can heal instead of being destroyed by the past. Later that night, as they prepared for bed in the master suite, they'd completely redecorated, erasing the memory of previous tragedies and filling it with hope for the future. Celeste found herself thinking about the journey that had brought them here. Do you ever regret it? She asked Adrian as he helped her with the necklace that had become difficult to manage around her growing belly. The way we started? All the danger and deception? Never. His answer was immediate and certain. If we'd met under normal circumstances, I probably would have been too afraid of the family curse to risk loving you. And you probably would have been too sheltered to see past my reputation. So you think we needed the crisis to find each other? I think we needed to see each other at our worst before we could appreciate each other at our best. He kissed the top of her head. We've been tested by fire, Celeste. Everything from here on out is going to feel easy by comparison. Even changing diapers at 3 in the morning? Even that. Adrian laughed, pulling her close. Although I reserve the right to complain about the sleep deprivation. As they settled into bed, Celeste felt Elena kick again, as if she were eager to join the world her parents were building for her. A world where the Elena Hawthorne Foundation would continue to grow and help more women find their freedom. A world where the Ravencroft family would be known for protection instead of tragedy. A world where love truly conquered all. I love you, Adrian Ravencroft, she whispered into the darkness. I love you too, Celeste Ravencroft. Forever and always. Outside, the Tennessee hills stood sentinel over Shadowmere, and inside, a family slept peacefully, their hearts full of hope for tomorrow and all the tomorrows to come. The curse was broken, the past was healed, and their future stretched out before them like a promise of endless possibility. In the morning, there would be more work to do, more women to help, more lives to save. But tonight, there was only love, and that was more than enough.